Well, let me welcome our friends and colleagues from Morocco for this very important first session of the U.S.-Morocco Strategic Dialogue.
I stay up, never sleep, case we gotta go. That way, yeah. Nation deep, move these on the road, 70. I stay up, sleep ain't in my plan. Why? Cause there they go, trying to sense the process in my land. We get all the prophets in my land. God bless all the prophets in my land. Take off on my flight before my land. Yeah, my land. Yeah, my land. Buried in hate, shine with the love. I am a God. Honor my fam, longer my days. Guy in a shock. I throw the Hail Mary, get bloody like Carrie. Die in my prime, like busting the grape, then pressing rewind. Get better with time, I phone home to the fortress. Memorize all the records of the Moors library in my conscious. Library of the Congress. Lies vary by the context. 1492, talk about the Spanish when it came to conquest. In real life, playing contraband. Trying to fill with the contraband. Hard life for an honest man. All night for my daughter on a hot block with no matzah pen. My land, that's express trust in the plan. You I lead, prophet the man. Who I be, Conway Stevens. Yes indeed, this be my land. I stay up, never sleep, case we gotta go. That way, yeah. Nation deep, move these on the road, 70. I stay up, sleep ain't in my plan. Why? Cause there they go, trying to sense the process in my land. We get all the prophets in my land. God bless all the prophets in my land. Take off on my flight before my land. Yeah, my land. Yeah, my land.
It's not a city corpse. 10,000 years haven't been a corpse. Foreigners came to my land pointing guns and swinging Jesus cross. Empire, not a cityscape. 5 atomic, not shitty lakes. Continent, not Turtle Island. Noblemen, not a wild man. Home is North America, not a stranger but the landlord. Free white people, not Negro, black, Ethiopia colored. Navigating with no water. Blacks are still getting slaughtered. Nationality the order. Foreigners create wall borders, calling themselves governors since they can't call themselves bait. To keep you in ignorance, they replace the E with the A. Keep you defended, always a defendant. Kill your brother over sneakers, but when the highwaymen kill you, you won't defend it.
I stay up, never sleep, case we gotta go. That way, yeah. Nation deep, move these on the road, 70. I stay up, sleep ain't in my plan. Why? Cause there they go, trying to sense the process in my land. We get all the prophets in my land. God bless all the prophets in my land. Take off on my flight before my land. Yeah, my land. Yeah, my land. Whoa, I stay up.
Islam.
Case we gotta go. That way. Nation deep, move these on the road.
It is a violation
I stay up, sleep ain't in my plan.
of dignity.
Trying to snatch the process in my land.
As long as there's blood,
God bless all the prophets in my land.
in the name of God, true and lasting peace.
My land. My land.
Common sense was made before book sense. Canaanland Moors presents Common Sense Quick.
Legendary, bury me in the North Gates Cemetery, February the 4th days. Son of Mary, day ahead of my born day. Independence and law makes civil a lost case. With case laws, we break them down like Jericho. Keeping all my lions tamed, I'm Chris Jericho. Or keep a mask on deck, I'm Rey Mysterio. Fake pandemics announced over the radio. Annoyed with the game, the joys and the pains. I'm Rob Bass mixing with rock the hard way. I was in a lost state. Prophets stood me up right, brought me to a lost gate. Cooking like I'm Sorbet, prepping like I'm Denzel. Malcolm X, Deja Vu, Roman J. Israel. Had no door, I lay in plain sight. But people still can't see it, so the snake's still showing up. Stakes still high, so the race still going up. Warriors of the North Gate, we not slowing up. Born in the manger, sworn to be savior. Walk through the valley of the shadows of the death grip of slavery. Looking for life, the book of Genesis. Astral plane entrances, invoke the nemesis. Abstract and images of past lives kicking in. Danger, running for your life. Finish him.
Morris Omar, key man or oracle, using Trinity powers, decipher allegorical, lost in metaphorical, holy books are metaphysic, facts slap a dirty more or a Drew Ali critic, calling him Thomas or Walter and get your face caved, or cut like a close shave, drowned in my brainwaves, squashed by heat waves, activating Kundalini, Abyssinia invaded by Mussolini, Selassie I in exile, reptile in Genesis, niggas appearing real, all I see is false evidence, DA are feminists, stomped on by elephants, won't let go prejudice but want Moorish benefits, when you feel the pull magnetic resonance, apis horns of the sacred bull called Maleficent, great cosmic mothers, return to blessedness, no pestilence, ace all the testaments, tap into remembrance, never to forget again, use energy right, not put spell effects on men, wandering the earth plane with no they live shades, keeps you a mental slave as the horizon fades, it's been decades since Christian crusades, not enough rebellions, too many vigil bouquets, holding on to the fence, burning on doomsday, war ruled by Mars, it might be on a Tuesday.
Canaanland Moors presents Common Sense Quick. What we do here is we add some common sense thinking to everyday situations or comments that may arise. Want to give it a try?
Salam. Peace and love to all Moors. If you got any questions, throw it in the chat in all caps. Just wanted to put this one out there. It's one of the Farrakhan kissing a guy defenders. First and foremost, we are a business, and I'm personally a Christian. So for you to send this as an attack against anyone when we are here to help people is horrible. I hope whatever is going on with you is fixed, and with all due respect, you will now be blocked, because that's not right, and anyone's sexual or relationship preference is none of my business or our business. Well, if it's none of our business, how come they're doing it on the stage at the podium with every people recording? Shouldn't that be limited to their bedroom if it's nobody's business? But our people can't see the pedophile campaign that's going on to try to turn their boys into girls and girls into boys. They don't see that. So unfortunately, they're gonna have to suffer when the go down gets going down. Right? Look at all the justification. Look at all the justification. How is it possible that you can justify and claim stuff is alright? Stuff is alright? How is it alright? Like, how is it alright? And there's no issues. Right? How's Nicki Minaj coming out talking about people should support the conscious artists and all this stuff, but then you're doing porn songs that children are gonna go sneak and go watch? How come people aren't seeing that they look like a dumbass when they do this fish lips thing and stick their tongue out to take pictures and stuff like that? How come we don't see anybody else in the world doing this madness? Only our people. Nobody else? Just us? Just us are nuts? Like, we're the only ones that's nuts. Nobody else is crazy? Everybody else is so sane? Sane like that? That our whole stuff is off. Right? If you're telling me wet pussy and stuff like that, I'm not thinking about vaginas. Like, that's a wet pussy right there. And what that has to do with sexuality or whatever, I don't know what people are talking about. I don't know what they're talking about. Well, the agenda, because the color is in it, and I don't know, I'm not sure what you're talking about this is a wet pussy. Just like somebody says kid, and I don't think about some child running around. I think about baby goats in my mind when I hear kid. So, well, my kids or whatever. Obviously, something's wrong with you if you have kids, if you're a human being. Because human beings don't have kids, only goats do that. But, we don't know what we're talking about. So we'll carry on with what we do. Just putting it out there so you can't say you weren't told. So you want to be black? Alright, well, guess where black comes from? Black comes from Negro. You know what they do with Negroes? This is what they do with Negroes. Alright, you can go look up this one. The Delectable Negro. Human Consumption and Homoeroticism. You want to be, let's get metaphysical. You want to get metaphysical. And play metaphysical games? We know something? You want to play like you know something? Alright, let's see how much we know. Let's see. Let's see. Why would they even consider the Negro delectable? Like, where are they going? I remember that don't debate Moors. Go debate Vincent Woodard. Don't debate Moors, remember. Pollard compares this Negro man to the warm, wide hills of my sweet home. This is not simply a Negro man of which he speaks, but rather a delectable thing, a personal familiar, an acquired taste and set of sensibilities. The Negro is as natural and permanent as the landscape, as aesthetically pleasing and necessary to the cultured citizen as poetry. The Negro in the institution of family and home, and simultaneously an evaporative nothing, a non-entity to this southern white gentleman who might just as soon lynch his object of affection were the black man to step outside of quote-unquote his place. For the Negro, this was dangerous territory indeed. It is as if whites brought to bear upon the Negro's person generations of European cultivation and institution building. Like poetry, a learned art, an acquired taste, the taste and hunger for the Negro was learned, rooted in repetition and practice. The Negro that Pollard speaks of was a familiar home territory, a safe place in and through which white men could feel, play, lust, rage, and finally make themselves at home. This type of Negro whites naturalized and romanticized much as they romanticized the natural landscape of the Americas after seizing it from murdered and systematically contained Native Americans. This type of Negro whites naturalized and romanticized. Now you're going to be out here learn about your nationality and birthrights, and you're going to hear people telling you about nationality, and you're going to hear people telling you about naturalization. To naturalize is not where you want to be. So anybody talking about naturalize with regard to you and citizenship, or you and status, or you and a country, or you and any type of expression of a being, know without a shadow of a doubt that you can't naturalize. Right? Because naturalize means that you're not the sovereign. Someone has to naturalize you. You can't naturalize yourself. So people with turbans and fezzes have taken the position of naturalizing people under the guise of the 13th Amendment with 20 sections, which is legitimate. What they fail to let you know is that the Bill of Rights stop at 10. And everything after that is a fraud. We are to proclaim our nationality and declare that to the world, that we are not Negro, black, or colored, which all of them tie together. The Negro is Spanish for black. Black, they would say, is the people's color. And color means fake. So anywhere along that line, and anything coming out of those, you lose. Because those are things to be naturalized and romanticized. It's not human beings. Right? Open your ears. Booker T. Washington poignantly experienced this institutionalization of the Negro, and he documented it in Up From Slavery, an autobiography from the 1900s. In 1879, on a stopover visit in the nation's capital, Washington, witnessed the town go into a fervor over a dark-skinned man checking into a white hotel. The town intended to lynch the man until they found that he was from Morocco and therefore not an American Negro. The town, remember, this is Booker T. Washington talking. This is these people's black guy that they rep. What's he repping? He's not about just the black guys and stuff like that, about the slavery stuff and his stuff. This is first-hand account of a Negro, people who don't call themselves Moors, a Negro seeing a Moor. A Negro seeing a Moor. And what he saw changed his whole paradigm. The town intended to lynch the man until they found out that he was a Moor. Oh, when they found out he's a Moor, he's not a Negro. Of course he could come in here and eat with us. Why not? So only Negroes are delectable and consumed. You already know they don't have enough cows for all these burgers. And there's mad burgers. And when we worked at McDonald's, we threw out mad burgers. Just threw out. Just because. But we also froze mad burgers. And they still got burgers out here? They still got cows out here? 50 billion people served or whatever like that. People getting the 3 meat stacked up on the thing, and there's still cows out here? And you really think that they're not doing it? Remember, It's only the delectable Negroes that go missing. It's only the delectable Negroes whose female children go missing and stuff like that. Nobody else playing any games out here with their children? Have them up and down the place in halter tops and all that stuff. You think they're not gonna get picked up by some perv? You really think they're not gonna get picked up by a perv? Or you think this is some what do you call it? Dress up the children for the pageant, whatever. When it's straight pervs out here, pervs you've been watching in movies. You call your favorite actor or whatever a perv. That only happens to Negroes though. That doesn't happen to people with nationalities. People with nationalities at least have some recourse if something happens to them. But Negroes, nothing. You're just delectable. You're just finger licking good for any colonist. That's why Drew Ali told you, you're not Negro, black, or colored. So you're not gonna fall into this whole human consumption machine. Have you eaten yourself? And you think that's some Frankenstein movie? It's not no movie. They are right and exact with who they are and what they stand for. And they haven't budged for a long time. So I don't know what people don't get. What don't you get? There's no way you tell me you're a human being and then you tell me about you have canine teeth. You have no canine teeth. What canine is what? You know what canine is? Canine is not a human being. Oh, you got canines and you're not a human being. Oh, you fell for the doctor guy? Doctor, white coat guy? You listen to the white coat guy. When their duty, they go operate on you, they might take a slice. Just to try you. You're sleeping anyways. You take a piece from your ass and just say, yeah, we cut too much right there. Do you know how crazy it is people used to eat people? Cut off man's balls and stuff like that, put it in a jar, have it at the house, chilling. You think they just did nothing with the body? When people got heads on walls of slaves and stuff like that, you think that they buried, where all these people getting buried at? How much people die? Ever since we were passing by the graveyard as children, it was full. They're still putting people in there? If you're not awake, you're living in a twilight zone, and you're about to get it. But you think it's some real stuff going on. You're in a twilight zone. You thinking people are colors and racism and get reparations because the white man did stuff like that? You're in the twilight zone. Or you're Indian and all that stuff? Oh, you're in the twilight zone. I don't know where you think you are, but you're obviously not where humanity is. If you have any questions, put them in the chat. In another instance that took place that same year, Washington was transporting a Native American youth who had a similar complexion to his own to Washington. Aboard the train, a dinner server informed Washington that the native youth could enter the dining car, but that he, a Negro of the same complexion, could not. In both the hotel and aboard the train car, we see the Negro serving as a utilitarian object that helped define social places, determine the interior and external margins of society, and mark the boundary between domestic and international terrains. The Moroccan man and the American Negro have the same hair texture, skin color, and phenotypic features. The only difference between the two men is a process of cultivation and domestication rooted in white tastes, comforts, habits, perceptions, and social needs. So they're saying, even though this Negro, who's supposed to be a slave that came over from Africa, and the Moroccan, who's in America, he's just in America, right? Oh yeah, there's a Moroccan in America, the Moroccan man in America, and he went to a hotel. Where does Moroccan man come from? Oh, he came from Morocco. How? How did he come from Morocco? What do you mean he came from Morocco? Like, what do you mean? Morocco's across the Atlantic Ocean. How these guys come over here on slave ship, and this guy took a plane? Like, how did he get over here? Moroccan man. And you're thinking Atlantic Ocean. Morocco is North America. Right above Mexico, which goes into Texas and California and all that, is Morocco of the West. So this Moroccan man and this American Negro have the same hair texture, same skin color, and phenotypic features. It's more than likely that the Moroccan man and the American Negro are from here, opposed to the Moroccan man is from Morocco and the Negro is from West Africa, and Negro got put on a slave ship and brought over here, and the Moroccan guy jumped over here, because the only people that would be in the water would be people who are navigators and slave boats. A Moroccan man just came over here from Morocco, and he just ended up at a hotel, and he looks like a Negro, and everybody's thinking that he's a Negro. And then the Moroccan and the Negro have the same hair texture and the same skin color and the same phenotypic features. The difference is one's Moroccan and one's a Negro. And what the Negro has to do is say that he's Moroccan, and then he would get everything that the Moroccan gets. But the Moroccan would never say that he's Negro. Why? Because the Moroccan man understands that the Negro is governed by Negro law. And the Negro law is called the Negro Acts. And the Negro Acts are only for Negroes, or people who assume that that's an identity, not knowing that it's a slave brand. And then every time you say Negro, just replace that with black, so you can put it in today's time. Right? Right? Okay. Now again, when we look at the scope, when we look through the scope and we see two different beings, we're off, because you're only supposed to be seeing one people. It's two Moors. There's not a Moroccan man and a Negro. There's no such thing as a Negro. That's a fiction. So it's really two Moors. It's really two Moroccans. One that knows himself and one that doesn't know himself. But both of them are the same people in the same land. One is conscious of who he is, and one is unconscious of who he is. And the one that's unconscious is at the mercy of anybody who has any type of power. Doesn't matter how much power they have. The little bit that they have, they could use it against the Negro because the Negro doesn't have any rights. The Negro is not protected by any treaties. The Negro is not protected by any law. The Negro is property. And again, when you say Negro, just replace that with black so you can put it in today's time. So when we look back at the time, right, so slavery, and then slavery abolished and all that stuff. Then you have Booker T. Washington and these people, and they're seeing people who look like them living comfortable. People who look like them getting respected. Obviously, there must be something there to consider. Right? And you go check all of them. By the time they get to the end of their life, they weren't on some slave stuff. All the slaves, by the time they got out of slavery, it wasn't some slave whatever. That wasn't the mindset. They were back in harmony with nature. They were back in harmony with truth. And making sure that they spread this information to our people. We have a legacy and a history and all this. And we're not just some slaves that came from Africa. And then you have the Renaissance, where people were conscious of who they were. Right? You had Ethiopian, Abyssinian, Kushite kings going to the League of Nations. So the plight of the Aboriginal and Indigenous people all over the world was being heard. That's why they even had a League of Nations and all that. And then, like we spoke about, along comes Noble Drew Ali with a message that the people who you think are Negro, black, colored, and all that stuff, they're not that, they're Moors. And he brought a complete program to get them out of mental slavery and bring them back into the constitutional fold of government so they can start governing themselves, which they did. Like we said, had everybody in office, knew the top people to know, right? Everybody having law degrees and all that stuff. And the thing was over. And then you have people still calling themselves black today when that stuff was unconstitutional. And Noble Drew Ali made it that. And now they're taking this unconstitutional position that has already been dealt with and trying to make it have some type of legitimacy. When really, the Negro is these people's food. And as long as you're a Negro, you will be, I guarantee you, you will be on the plate of your enemy. Because dude already came out with the boxing stuff, licking dude's blood off him and stuff like that. Do you think these people don't, like, what didn't you get? What didn't you get that they're cannibals? And then you want to know how come people lost and all that. What do you mean? Because he's not vile enough to suck his blood and take his energy. A vampire, do that easy. Ain't no big deal for a vampire. So where you have to be is on the side of your nationality and birthrights, because everything else is food. You know what food is? And you'll play the game right now and think, nah, the Moors don't know what they're talking about until you're on the plate. And when you're on the plate, it might be too late at that point. There's no middle ground, right? There's one way to your salvation, and it's about understanding, knowing the truth about your nationality and your birthrights. Because we're not Negro, black, or colored people. So, to get the lessons about who you are as a Moor, and you're starting in this, you want to make sure you have unabridged dictionaries. So the dictionaries at your aunt's house on the bottom shelf, the big ones that nobody ever looks at anymore or whatever, or in the attic or whatever, those ones, those dictionaries. Because the abridged dictionaries that we have today, which would be the paperback dictionaries, they're not going to tell you what words actually mean. They're going to tell you what words were made up to mean. So when you have right dictionaries, right? So we're looking at, we speak in English, so English dictionary, law dictionary, from the same thing, hardcover, the big ones on the bottom shelf, look is what you want to see in the dictionaries. You don't want to see the paperback stuff with the color and all that stuff, the fancy looking, blue ones and red ones and pink ones. No, that's not what you want. Right? Once you have those, an etymology dictionary. Right? And then you can go by the dates, anything 60s and earlier. Law dictionaries, English dictionaries, etymology dictionaries. As a start. Right? Once you have those, then you can really start studying, because now you can look up stuff that you don't know, opposed to in Negro mindset, you read stuff, you don't know the word, but you don't even look up the word to see what it means, and you just keep reading. You don't want to do that, because that's how we got in this mess in the first place. So once you have your dictionaries, you'll go to the online Moorish University that's free, called rvbaypublications.com. You go to rvbaypublications.com and commit yourself to 6 months to a year of studying, because that website is the place to be if you really want to know about this. If you're coming into this because you want to learn, that's where you want to go. If you're coming into this from you got some charges and you want to get off them, or some tax people are trying to get whatever, or they're trying to take your house, or you saw this abandoned thing, you want to claim it, and you want to, if that's what you're on, then that's not the place for you. You need to go somewhere else. We can't help you. But if you want to learn and you're open to learning, then we would say rvbaypublications.com. That's the first stop. And dedicate yourself. It's free information on there. You don't have to buy anything. You don't have to sell your children to get some papers so that you can get off the case, and none of that. Right? You go there and you put in some time to studying. right? Yes, we want the the stuff right now and all that, but it's not gonna work. We've been around. We've seen people reach the mountaintop and fall off all the way back down to the bottom, just because, right? And we see people get on the mountaintop and build a mountaintop on the mountaintop, and then get on top of that. So, this is vast. This is more vast than you can imagine. So don't get caught up. Dedicate yourself to say, okay, I'm gonna put it 6 months. It's like say you want to get rid of the whatever, and you put in your time. You want to learn whatever else, you put in your time. You want to learn to drive, you put in your time. You study the book, you get behind the wheel, you practice. You don't do that in one day. Same thing with this. It's not no one day thing. Any questions whatsoever, feel free to put it in the chat. I don't know how much time we're going on, but we're here till this countdown. During and beyond slavery, blacks have associated the type of Negro Pollard described with femininity, but more specifically with a nurturing maternal male role. Trudier Harris describes a black man who plays a nurturing role as grandmotherly. Analyzing the issue more deeply, she notes that this grandmotherly type black man approaches the mammy figure in the extent of his concern for the white person who is in his care. His primary goal is to soothe the precious child whose welfare rests in his hands. To comfort the child, the grandmother must show him that the danger which threatened him is no longer real because grandmother has control over the boogeyman. The black man plays this role for Pollard, who wants to hold him, be held by him, and feel a returned sense of safety within domestic shores, after having traveled throughout the strange and unsafe world. The black male grandmother type figure reproduces the national identification and internal and external sense of geography of the white male. This, he or she figures, also reproduces the white male child as a father, master, owner, and kind of paternal family member. Like the difference between wild and domestic game, the more appetizing Negro was one whom whites had domesticated, made into a type of pet, whom they could work, romanticize, brutalize, or socially consume. This is what you are when you say you're black. This is how Europeans look at you. You play that black game. Ex-slave Jim Allen, speaking to a WPA interview, admitted that he was his master's pet. Did we have good eating? Yes, ma'am. Oh, master, fed so good, for I was his pet. He never allowed no one to perster me either. As I done told you, I was... They don't want that part read, huh? As I done told you, I was Merce Allen's pet nigger boy. I was called a stray. I slept on the floor by old Miss and Mars Bob. Another man named Pet Franks was given this name by his master. His master and the master's family conditioned him to be their domesticated object on the plantation. Interviewed years after slavery, he revealed, "I knows all about slavery and the war. I was right there on the spot when it all happened. I wish to goodness I was back there now, not in the war. But in slavery times, I do members hearing about slaves on other places getting whipped sometimes. I guess niggers like that wish they was free, but I didn't want to leave my white folks ever." The slave master's taste and appetite for the Negro encompassed a range of cultural registers and social milieus. With Jim Allen, the master more explicably draws upon the correlation between black person and animal, referring to the black man as a type of domesticated pet and a stray creature. The parasitic master, in this instance, feeds his sense of authority and social stature through the diminishment and animal-like treatment of his slave. Likewise, Pollard and Gildersleeve reveal, through a poetics of Negro consumption, a learned art of cultivating the Negro to fulfill white hungers, fantasies, imaginings, and deeply seated emotional needs. Even with the legal freeing of the enslaved population, Washington cannot escape what I describe as the institutionalization of the Negro as vacuous and emptied out social entity, a template upon which the white man and white culture inscribes its humanity and social reality. That's what you want? You're going to limit yourself to being somebody's pet and then justifying it when challenged? Why are you his pet? What do you mean, why am I his pet? You can't tell me I'm not his pet. We came from Africa and all that stuff. All right. Then don't complain about never, ever getting what you deserve as a people. Don't complain. The Taste of Nat Turner. Nat Turner's life and political legacy represents one of the most graphic documented cases of white cultivated tastes for the Negro manifested as literal consumption and harvesting of body parts. The literal consumption of Turner, alongside the sexualized consumption of Smith, offer a fuller picture of white hunger for black flesh and sex coinciding with white male codes of honor and self-glorification. The themes of white male nobility, a cultivated appetite for the Negro, a human consumption, all inform the life and legacy of Nat Turner. As a result of the controversial nurture of Turner's memory and legacy in his hometown of Southampton, Virginia, there exists to this day no memorial to commemorate his life and his efforts to free enslaved persons of the region. Outside the Historical Society of the center of town, there is a colonial-era house that stands on a raised brick foundation behind a sign that reads, "This is the last house on the killing spree of Nat Turner and his men." Whites regard Turner in local lore and memory as the murderer of whites and their babies, as a twisted sexual deviant, and as a depraved example of criminal insanity. In antebellum America, whites even went as far as to depict Turner and his accomplices as murderous cannibals who hungered for white flesh. In Harriet Beecher Stowe's fictional rendering of Turner Revolt in Dread, 1956, she has a black male insurrectionist say, "When the Lord said unto us, smite, then we will smite. We will not torment them with the scourge and fire, nor defile their women, as they have done with ours, but we will slash them utterly and consume them from off the face of the earth. Even among the most well-intentioned white abolitionists, the harsh reality of unmitigated black male violence and retribution conjured racist images of African cannibals engaging in human consumption. Whites from the North and South, of both abolitionist and slave-holding sentiments, contrived to paint an image of Turner as cannibalistic and, more importantly, as a dishonorable and self-hating man. Nat Turner came out of the dismal swamp starved at last and was taken and hung as a monster black fiend, and history has passed him as a murderer on the gallows. Whites had to dishonor Turner, disfigure him, and make his person and legacy a monstrosity. Such a strategy of character assassination deflected attention away from the real brutal circumstances of slavery that initiated Turner's revolt and the incidences of literal consumption that informed the execution of Turner and the treatment of his corpse. After Turner was captured, he was hung, skinned, and bled, and his body was boiled down to grease. Blacks of the region around this time swore of the consumption of castor oil. According to William Sidney Drury, a 19th century historian, the famous remedy of doctors' antebellum days, castor oil, was long dreaded for fear it was old Nat's grease. Drury and others have refused to such beliefs as an older prejudice among older darkies. General Epps, for example, described the treatment of black persons as revolting, inhumane, and not justified, and characterized by acts of atrocity. Perhaps the general had in mind individuals like the following black man who whites shot, quartered, and beheaded for no reason at all, except that he knew nothing about the Turner insurrection. He told them he didn't know anything about any insurrection. They shot several balls through him, quartered him, put his head on a pole of the fork of the road leading to the court. This is no exaggeration if the Virginia newspapers may be taken as evidence. The Turner insurrection brought out in whites, in particularly white men, a violently stoked appetite and rabid hunger for black flesh. Unspoken codes of honor and vengeance drove whites to quarter, burn, maim, and behead blacks whom they saw as having violated the sacred provinces of white masculinity, white family, and the innocence embodied in murdering white babies. In 1931, editorial J.S. Musgrave cites from a history text that documents the consumption of Turner. The text reads, "Nat's body was boiled up, his oil saved and sold for a long period as panacea for all ills, known as Nat's grease." Musgrave refers to these documented observations as pure, unalloyed bunk. He retreats into a typical mode of white denial, yet when one thinks about the boiling down of Nat Turner's flesh into an inquiring manner, it makes sense to ask, for what purpose did whites use his liquid flesh? Was it used to cook food, oil the body, for indigestion as medicine, or for some other domestic use? Working from a largely unrevised note of the folks, scholars have failed to see the inherent layers of inquiry into the folks' refusal to eat Nat Turner. It would have been so much more simpler to hang, bury, or burn the body. Why go through all that effort involved in bleeding the corpse and boiling down the flesh? Why preserve the liquid flesh of one of so-called hated and feared? Why behead him and secretly preserve his skull? Ironically, we find the suspicions of the folk validated and archived in Eurocentric hegemony and legacy. The treatment of Nat Turner's body might possibly date back to Renaissance and early American societies. Under the auspices of medical cannibal, the practice of preserving and ingesting body parts for medical purposes, Europeans preserved and ingested blood, skin, and other body parts. According to Shirley Lindenbaum, it was common for Renaissance and Victorian Europeans to ingest human tissue, usually that of an executed criminal, as supposed medicine or tonic. So you want to be Negro and black and all that stuff? Then you're going to be these people's food forever. Because that's how they do. That's how they've been doing. Ask Nat Turner and all them. Right? So this is the delectable Negro. Human consumption and homoeroticism within U.S. slave culture. Vincent Woodard. I would suggest not being black, so you don't end up on these people's plate, because that's all that Negro, black, and colored is good for these people's medicine or tonic. Or skin lotion or whatever that they use, whatever they're taking all these bodies and boiling them down for. Right? That's what happens when you claim who you're not. You're looking at some slave pictures, people burning, and you're thinking that they just burnt them, left them there. No, they cut that up. They ate that. Who's burning that after? Everybody got their little piece to take home. Their little piece of nigger. Little piece of nigger John, who everybody liked him. He was a good nigger, but when he touched the dog that day, well, he shouldn't have touched the dog. Right? He thought it was McDonald's. He thought it was Burger King. Eating your own babies. I guess murdered in these streets. Oh yeah, we can't show you the body because the casket, and we gotta keep the casket closed because the body's, there's nothing even in there. Burying paper. Burying paper with hair, with a wig. Paper with a wig is your son. And this is where we're at. So what you gonna do? Now that you know, if you claim black, they're eating you. Claim any of these fictions, you're a slave and all that, then that means you're not Moroccan. And if you're not Moroccan, then